Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to another Lost in the Pond video, and this one is 7 words Britain coined and then blamed on America. Now, I guess this is going to be sort of similar to, what video was it? I feel like I've done a video that touched upon a similar topic. I don't know what the specific thing was, but it was words that we used first, and then the word was being used in the US, and then we, we hated it. I said we. British people hate it, or typically hate it, like the word soccer, for example. But there are obviously many more words. I don't know if this is sort of similar. The title, what it says, it seems like it will be a similar topic, but I don't actually know. So I mean, we'll see, right? But yeah, man, another Lost in the Pond video reaction. It's been quite a long time, to be fair. And I mean, if you haven't already, check his channel out. I mean, I'm sure you know who he is already by now. But on the off chance you don't, links are in the description to his channel and to this video. Show him some love. You know how it is, but. Let's jump into this one. Quick shout out to my Instagram, my Twitter. We're closing in on 7k on my Instagram, so I appreciate you helping me get to that. We're so close now. And same for Patreon as well. Links are all there for those who are interested in seeing extra videos that I've posted that may get blocked on YouTube, or just extra sort of reactions basically, as well as early posts. Some special videos that I do get posted there early, so if you're interested in that, links are in the description. But let's jump into this one, man.
Hello, I'm YouTube sensation Lawrence Brown, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain...
I just done a reaction to Ricky Gervais, and I do see similarities in their just sort of, I don't know, their humour, their sarcasm. It's so funny to see how, I guess Ricky Gervais is influenced, to be fair. Ricky Gervais would be older than Lawrence. I think he is. I think he's in his 50s. Lawrence looks what? Mid-20s, I'd say? Say mid-20s. Ricky Gervais, what? 50s, I think? So yeah, Lawrence, bro, you got a long time before you're there, man. That's all I'll say.
Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to words. As we've seen again and again on this channel, Britain and America are indeed two nations.
I've just clocked, he loves the word pertains. Isn't that the word he literally uses in every video? He literally says that every video, doesn't he?
Divided by a common language. And while this linguistic disparity can lead to hilarious conversations on Twitter, it can also lead to unadulterated anger, as in, I hate the way British people say the word pasta. Well, all I have to say to that is it's going to blow your mind when you discover the fact that us Brits like to mix our pasta with tuna and sweet corn. And sometimes...
Ooh, yes please. I'll have it with tuna, sweet corn, get some pesto in there. I'll get some broccoli, get some peas, get some carrots. Oh yes, please, man. That is a delicacy to me.
I would argue more often, anger of this kind is directed from Britain to America. And I get it, we all have pet peeves that cause an irrational amount of anger. Like, for instance, I don't like it when I'm in a quiet room with lots of people and one person decides to yawn like it's their own Broadway show just to announce the fact that they're tired. But in Britain, a pretty widespread pet peeve seems to be that Americans use alternate words to words that we use in Britain, such as, for example, the word alternate instead of alternative. And over the years, increasingly, my own approach to this situation has been to sit back and think, do we really need to get angry about this? And this viewpoint of mine becomes particularly prevalent when we're talking about American English.
Bro, people get angry over anything these days, so it doesn't surprise me that people genuinely will get frustrated and pissed off by these things that just shouldn't annoy you. The fact that some people will get angered by these things, it is just a weird sort of thought to me. But hey, that's just the world we're in, It's just the world we're in.
English words that were coined in Britain. That's right, many of these so-called American linguistic faux pas that send us Brits into a horrible rage, we came up with them. Now I get it, America is the top dog, and I'm all in favour of taking countries to task when they deserve it. But I am also in favour of doing so only when it's done through the lens of truth and fact and toilet jokes. And so without further ado, here are 7 words that Britain coined and then blamed on America.
God,
Any
really?
assertion that America is entirely to blame for using different synonyms to its British counterpart is rubbish, or should I say, garbage. Firstly, again, who cares, but also, I do. And again, at the back of my mind, I can hear Uncle Toby saying, oh, Lawrence, you do know we have the word garbage in Britain, don't you? And I know we do. We have it in the sense of, that's garbage, or that's rubbish, or that's bollocks. The definition that I'm referring to here is the word...
No one really says it, to be honest. I guess maybe in a different term, like you said, that's garbage, but I don't even think people say it like that, but... The fact that it was coined here first, what?
But garbage to mean waste. Again, what the British would call rubbish. It's all very confusing.
Yeah.
But in Britain, we also once used the word garbage to mean waste to be disposed of. And when I say waste, I mean kitchen waste. And when I say Britain, I mean Middle England. And that's because in late Middle English, the word garbage was often defined as the offal of a fowl, giblets and kitchen waste, and that what is purged away. And in many ways, that definition can be used to describe what we in Britain did to that very use of garbage. And the same is true of this. Now, to be fair, in my experience, this...
Aluminium. I don't know why it's indium though, because you look at the spelling and it is. Aluminum. It is. I always thought it was spelled aluminium. Again, I know it isn't now, but I always thought that. But you actually look at the spelling and it's like, what? Where have we got it from? What? Aluminium. Aluminum. Because it's aluminium, I say aluminium, but aluminium. I don't know. It is weird how we've managed to add an I into it though.
Now, to be fair, in my experience, this particular entry is a word that receives pushback on both sides of the pond, right? Americans say, I think it's weird that British people say aluminium, and British people say, I think it's weird that Americans say aluminum. And so who wins in this critical debate? And the answer is none of us. We're all losers, and this is really silly. But if you are the sort of person that thinks it's weird that Americans say aluminum, try telling that to the British chemist Sir Humphrey Davy, who, in fact, he's dead, so you can't. Now, Humphrey Davy was a scientist who performed numerous experiments trying to isolate what would become aluminum/aluminium, and it is he who is widely credited with naming it. And if we're going to take issue with people that use words that go against our linguistic biases, then let's take issue with him, because at first he wanted to call it aluminum, right? What an idiot. And so when he was criticised by his European contemporaries for somehow having the gall to coin a word that wasn't entirely of the Latin origin, Humphrey Davy published a textbook in which he used the spelling aluminum. But this spelling, believe it or not, was then criticised by his British contemporaries of the early 19th century, who said things like, that doesn't have a very classical sound, whatever that means. Can I suggest an amendment? Do aluminium instead. And both words remained in the English language, and funnily enough, aluminium was once more popular as a use in the United States at the very same time that aluminum was the common usage in Britain. Now,
and it just switched. That is so
eventually,
strange.
aluminum did work its way into American English and was the spelling of choice for one Noah Webster in his American Dictionary of the English Language. Today, the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry recognizes aluminium as a standard word for the element in question, but also aluminum as an acceptable variant. And one thing that often gets lost in this debate, can we even call it a debate, is that Canada also adopted aluminum. It's almost as if, well, you know, Canada can get a free pass because they celebrate Boxing Day and put the Queen on their money. But more later on how a certain words...
Yo, what the hell? I feel like I heard about this before, but the Queen being on the dollar blows my mind. That is crazy. Look at the colours on this note as well. Jeez. That's one cool last note.
Their money. But more later on how a certain word spread around the Commonwealth countries. And speaking of things that spread, that brings us on to this.
Oh, man.
In the modern-day United States, the word cooties is often used to describe a fictional childhood disease. And for me, growing up in Britain, the equivalent of this word was the lurgy, as in, don't come near me, James, you've got the lurgy, and also you don't know what deodorant is. So great, when I was a kid in the 1980s, both countries had different words for fictional diseases, so imagine the conspiracy theories on the playground. But perhaps the only made-up element of this entire story is that Americans coined the word cooties. In fact, nobody is 100% certain of the exact origin of the word, with some saying that it's a Tagalog origination and others insisting that it comes from the Malay word kutu, meaning louse. But the anglicisation of the word can be traced back to 1917, when it was used by British soldiers. And in this instance, we're not talking playground games. This was back when men were men with lice. And so presumably, because everything going on around them was absolutely terrible, they needed something fun and cutesy to describe the almost as terrible things in their hair. Sometime later, US servicemen picked up the word while serving alongside the British in the Philippines. Thereafter, it caught on in the United States. And so, instead of being baffled by this American word...
That's ridiculous how something like that can just lead it to be spreading, something's like a few people just sort of using it, or like a group of people from the UK and the US sort of mixing vocabulary could lead to that word ending up being used commonly in the US. That's so wild to me.
Just hold up our hands and say, it was us, we gave Americans cooties. Now I know what you're thinking, Lawrence, that was a long time ago, there's no need to cry over spilled milk. Oh yeah.
Oh no.
In a future video, I've absolutely no doubt that I will cover all of the ways that British and American cereal is very different. But right now I want to focus on the liquid that is commonly associated with cereal, milk, and specifically the type of milk that is made when all of the milk fat is removed from whole milk. I read that on Wikipedia. I'm talking about skimmed milk, or at least that's what I would have called it in Britain. In America, they call it skim milk. Now, instinctively, I can see why this one seems weird because, you know, if we were to consult our friends once again from the early 19th century, skimmed with that ed ending would seem to have a more classical sound for a past participle. And so naturally, people in Britain think, skim milk sounds like you've skimmed over Grammar 101. But woe there, fellow Brits, back up the truck, because try telling that to arguably Britain's most famous writer, William Shakespeare.
What?
He is widely credited with coining the...
Can't argue with Big Don William, man. If he said it, then it's true. Then that's just how it is. Can't argue with it. But skim milk, I've never said skim milk in my life. I've never heard anyone say it, but I didn't actually know there was a difference, to be honest. It's weird how there are differences with the most unimportant things and how people maybe actually get stressed about it. I don't think there's people who would get pissed off by this, right? But there probably are a few people who genuinely hate it, vice versa, like both ways, which is just crazy.
The phrase skim milk, because not only does the phrase, used metaphorically, appear in A Midsummer Night's Dream, but it crops up in the later script for Henry IV when the character of Hotspur says, "Oh, I could divide myself and go to buffets for moving such a dish of skim milk with so honourable an action. It's been a long time since I acted." And this is Shakespeare, the same man that ordinarily loved to use words like skimmed but replaced the E with an apostrophe because he was pretentious. Or because that's how things were done by then. Either way, the term skim milk was in circulation in England even before the first permanent English settlement in the United States. The same is also true of this.
Cleats. Okay, Cleats is actually a big one, and I always got confused. Like Cleats is like football boots or like sports shoes. Like when I say sports shoes, I mean like the ones with like blades in the bottom. So like obviously if you use them in like American football or like baseball. Would you wear them in baseball? I don't think you would, because you're running on grass, so maybe you would. Obviously in soccer or football and like rugby and stuff. So I mean, that's what cleats are, right? Like what I would say is like football shoes, I think it's fair to say that few things bring out people's passionate side more than sports. Indeed, I'm told we saw recent evidence of that right here in the United States when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cemented a 7th championship ring for singer and entertainer Wayne Brady. But when it comes to online debates between Britain and America, sports terminology is often at the top of the list. And that's why you'll see things from the British side like, it's not soccer, it's football, and they don't wear cleats, they're called football boots. But here's the real kicker. That was a football pun. Yeah. The word cleat predates its use as a soccer term. In fact, from the late 14th century, the word cleat meant a wedge of wood bolted to a spar to keep it from slipping. And later, this meaning was transferred to shoes, as in a thin metal plate fastened under a shoe. And it's first attested in the football sense from the early 20th century. Coincidentally, that's when the sport was taking off in America, and that brings us on to this. After years of doing a YouTube channel in which I uncover the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, you tend to lose track of all of the times that somebody might ask you, what do you think of how Americans call it soccer, Lawrence? The implications, of course, being that somehow this is A, unique to the United States, and B, should be illegal. It's actually not. There's a European country, Italy, I think, that it's not actually said as soccer, but like the translation is like a lot more similar to soccer than it is to football. I know in Australia they say it, Canada they say it. A lot of, I think, South American countries say it, I'm pretty sure. A lot of people do say it, it's just a thing that people seem to forget it's just in the US when it's obviously not. And again, it used to be one of those things when I was younger, I used to be like, oh, you can't say that, how can you say that? Bro, I mean again, I'm saying this is when I was like 14. Why does anyone care, man? Like, why? Like, I don't get why it's so like hated. It's just a term, man. And plus, again, you got American football, so it makes sense as to why it's said.
But try telling that to Oxford University students from the Victorian age.
And yet it was started here.
Again, you can't, they're dead, so I'm going to speak on their behalf. Basically, in Britain in the early 1860s, there were various forms of football. You had the version where people kicked a leather ball around with the intention of getting it into a net. And you also had rugby football, the game where people run around with an oval-shaped ball, a sport that would later evolve into what Americans call football. And so the Football Association in the UK decided that in order to differentiate these different types of football, they would name the first one, the one that more commonly involves your foot touching a ball, as association football. But students, as they are wont to do at Oxford University, had other ideas. And they were coming up with all sorts of slang expressions that would end in the letters ER, not to be confused with the hospital drama with George Clooney. And this included a lot of words that are still in use in Britain today, like brekkers instead of breakfast, rugger instead of rugby, and soccer instead of association football. How does that work? So they took 3 letters from association, SOC, sock, and turned that into the slang word soccer. And from there it spread, and the word was used uncontroversially in Britain for some time. And so nobody thought anything of it when it spread to, yes, the United States of America, but also Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland, all of whom still use the word.
Ireland as well. It's literally a country that's so close to us, and they say it as well. Like, again, I don't know why it's so hated. I mean, just let people say what they want to say. I suppose there's other countries out there that have a completely different term as well compared to football or soccer. There's like another term as well that a few countries have. I think. I'm actually 100% sure, but I think.
But to this day. Britain, on the other hand, eventually reverted back to football. Its populace forgot and blamed America for the whole thing. It even continues to do so despite the fact that there is one other country that uses the term soccer without controversy, and that country is Britain. I'm not sure if it's just because they have nice catchy names, but various British football related TV shows incorporate the word soccer into their...
That's actually very true. Soccer AM, Soccer Saturday. Yeah, it's true. That's actually very true.
Without the resulting violence. See, for example, Soccer AM, Gary Neville's Soccer Box, and Gillette Soccer Saturday. And so I don't want to hear any more of this debate. That's it. End of. Full stop. Or should I say, this.
Period.
When it comes to this ongoing argument between British and American English, not even punctuation is safe. For example, what we in Britain call an exclamation mark, Americans call an exclamation point. What we call brackets, Americans call parentheses. And what we call a full stop, Americans call a period.
Parentheses? I've never heard that in my life. Wait, really? That just sounds like a long-ass word to say for something so simple.
Which is sure to get all of the teenagers giggling, even as they're coming to terms with the British equivalent of the word eraser. But as it happens, this sense of period, as in a full pause at the end of a sentence, is first attested in the English language shortly before the first attempted English settlement at Roanoke. It was an Elizabethan thing, just like Shakespeare, who, at the end of the day, probably came up with this word too. That's it for this episode. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever...
I love these videos, man. They're so fun to just see the differences. It is always interesting to see how certain things would come from here, and it leads to like being changed or whatever, and we change our thoughts on it, but then we end up hating the words when it's in the US. It's just weird how it works. I'd be interested if there's any sort of videos like this that work halfway around. So 7 words America coined, then blamed on Britain. I don't know if that would be the case, but if there was, man, that would be really interesting to see. Finally, a Brit that I respect has the gonads to accept the soccer question properly. You're the man. There's one thing I hate more than lying. Skim Milk, which is water, that is lying about being milk. Why do British politicians call a plan a scheme? The first time I heard that was during the Prime Minister's questions, and I thought someone was doing something nefarious. The world needs more of these etymological explorations. Bro, what are these fucking words? How the hell am I supposed to know what that means? The deadpan joke about what? But yeah, man. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. Again, it is interesting to see these differences. Tell me some more in the comments. If there's not, is there some more videos? He's obviously got some of the difference in like words that we use, but I don't know if there's more on this specific thing, because this was a really interesting one. But yeah, if there isn't, let me know some in the comments. And also, like I said, if there's any from like the other way around, that America coined that Britain, that they're playing on Britain or whatever, please let me know, because I'd be intrigued to see that. But Yeah, until next time, like, subscribe.